Hello, this is Rhonda from birdwithabrush.com, a site where I share information on painting miniature figures. I previously did a stream on Twitch where I swatched some of the colors related to the Reaper Virtual Expo. My intention was to do a second swatch party on Twitch once I received the other half of the colors, but then there were a lot of storms in the US and everything got delayed and I had painting deadlines, so I'm just going to do a quick little sad, lonely swatch party here on YouTube, and then I will scan everything and put them up online. My scanner's pretty true to color, so I don't think the video is super true to color, but because some of these are metallics, you'll get to see the sheen and some of the colors in the different metallics, so you'll get just some different information between the video and the swatches, and you can choose whatever suits your preference. So one set that I'll be swatching is the Cyber Gangs, and the other set is Cyber Metal. So they come in these cardboard boxes, and then the paints are also packed in plastic trays within the boxes. This is the previous set of swatches that I did. There's a box set of 12 colors that comes in one of the Reaper swag boxes, and I suspect will be sold separately. And then there's a 3-pack in another one of the swag boxes, and I've got an unboxing video up here on YouTube if you're interested in that. And then Reaper also does these sample colors, and I swatched some of these out, and I have one more of those. But this is the sheet. It's currently empty for the new set of colors. I shook all of these paints before I started the camera. I have a vortex mixer and it's kind of loud, so I wanted to do that before I started the video so you wouldn't have to listen to it. This is inexpensive watercolor paper. It's Canson XL watercolor paper. I think they have a mixed media paper too. Thicker paper is better if you're going to swatch paint with water in it like miniature paint. Index card works even. It'll buckle. You'll see little dips where the paint got it wet. But you just want something heavier than computer paper if you want to try this at home. There's lots of different ways to do swatches, and even computer paper, if that's all you have and you want to see your colors, it's still great for information. So I like to put the paint down in such a way that I get two kinds of information, at least when I'm doing the swatches on paper. Sorry, this one's leaking a little. So where it comes straight out of the bottle, they call that the mass tone. So that's kind of the most opaque the color is going to be. But if you add a little bit of water and start pulling it down, they call that the undertone. And you'll be surprised sometimes at the colors you'll see there. It's a little bit shiny from the lights, but you can get a bit more of an idea. And sometimes you'll find that the undertone of colors is surprising. You might have a black that actually has a lot of blue in it or a lot of brown in it. And if you thin paints down to do glazes and washes, you're working with that undertone color. So it's useful for us to know as miniature painters. So that was the Arcos green. All of the paints in this set are named for various factions in the Reaper Virtual Expo world. This is Turkey Red. So I was a little concerned about these paints because, as I mentioned, my package was delayed because of winter storms. Normally the weather doesn't get, we have winter here in the south, but it doesn't get too cold between where I live and where the Reaper Miniatures facility is. But it got very cold in Texas. It didn't actually get that bad where I was. And there was freezing weather, and my package had left right before that happened. Oh, that's a nice rich red. So I was a little worried about the paints freezing. And if you'd like to know more about how to check your paints for freezing damage and whether you can recover from that, which you can't really, I've got a video up on this channel, and I have an example of a frozen paint. So because I had this shipment and there was a mistake, and someone at Reaper was sending me these same paints to swatch, and so I received, I think, 14 paints in one shipment, and then 27 or 28 paints with my mega box. And out of all of those, and these things took like more than a week to come, and UPS had them the whole time. So I'm pretty sure that they spent some time on a truck or in a storage facility that probably wasn't, fully heated. And out of all of those, I only had one paint that was damaged by freezing. So even if you have paints that have been exposed to the cold, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're all right off. You should go through and check them. Do something kind of like what I'm doing here. You don't have to do the part where you add the water. Just have a swatch like this and pull it down. And I'll show you the frozen paint at the end because it's one of the promo pinks. And it's the only one of that color I have, so it'll at least let you see. I think the color's the same. I wouldn't 100% swear to it that the color, I don't think the color is damaged by the freezing. I think it's the acrylic polymers in the binder that get damaged. They clump up with the pigment. So this is Grim Gray, and this will be interesting when I was talking about the undertone. We'll find out, is that really, you know, what kind of gray is that? Is it a little bit warm? Is it a little bit cool? And see, I think there is some blue in this. So that's, you know, that's got, it's like a dark greeny blue. So that's a different color than you might have realized from looking at it, you know, straight out of the bottle. And then this last one is Regulator Scarlet. Down a little more. Sorry, they're all a bit drippy at the top. I would normally stop and clean up the nibs, but another time. I don't want to make this video too boring for you guys. So this is a more orangey red than the Root Turkey. It's quite vivid, which I don't think is going to show up on the video. Again, once these dry, I'm going to put them on my scanner, which is pretty true to color, and I'll post the scanner on birdwithabrush.com. Okay, so those were all matte, you know, standard matte colored miniature paints. These next sets are metallics. And I know that Sadie, the paint mixer, had some fun with these. She loves sparkly, shiny kinds of paints. And these are going to, in some ways, show up better on the video than they will in my swatches, because you have to move a metallic around to really see all of its cool properties. And this is a very pretty color. So even all the paints are wet, so they're going to shine a little, but you can see the part that I pulled down, how it's different from the matte paints. And it's got some sparkle and sheen. So that was the green titanium. This is blue titanium. I'm going to try to edit the video of the first swatch party where I'm answering some people's questions and we're just chatting and stuff. So that one's a little longer, but there's a little more going on. And hopefully I'll do more swatch parties in the future, or just general streaming events. So that's the blue titanium. It's a nice kind of, I don't know if I'd say slate exactly, but it's a nice blue. I like it. This one is tungsten plating, and I've been curious about that. It looks like a great color. Oh yeah, that is pretty. And useful, I think. It's like a taupe metallic almost. This is how I might describe it. So this is hot blue. Now they say metallics, but there's lots of shiny, shimmering things. Many, many years ago, I painted like a fancy dress on a miniature where I used some of these paints. And then, I mean, we didn't even call it that at the time, but effectively I was doing what we call shaded metallics now. And I was thinking it would be fun to go back and try that again. And these look like perfect colors to do it with. Long ago, Reaper had the Pro Paint line, and there were some colors that they called silks and satins, and they were a bit more like this. So this you might see in a standard metallic collection, and maybe that one, that's like a blue steel. This one's going to be a bit of a steel color, I think. So it's a little bit gloppy, but I think it's just because there was paint stuck in the dropper bottle. I'm going to open that up and look inside. And yeah, nothing seems gummy about that paint, so I don't think it was damaged by the cold. It's just, sometimes paint will collect in the tip of the dropper and start to dry up in there. So I actually try to go through my paints periodically and clear that kind of thing out. I've added a little too much water to that one. I'm going to add a little more paint. Yeah, now it's coming out fine. So that one is a little blobbier than it needed to be. But that was poor technique, not a problem with the paint. Oh, but except now we lost the video. And then the Aoki steel. It looks a little lumpy here. There was some paint that was dried up in the tip, and I really should have been taking the time to clear them out and stuff like that, but I was trying to make this video not take too long. So this is application error. This is not a problem with the paint. I opened it up and looked at it, and it's fine. I don't know if I have another piece of paper here to test it on. Right here, I'll just put some in this palette. And see, the tip's still kind of stuck. But there's not a problem with the paint. And it didn't get frozen. So I think that I mentioned this previously in the video, but about the frozen paint. But if you want to know more about what frozen paint looks like, check this channel, and there's an example there. And the last one is Afterburn. I think this is very similar to one of my very favorites of the old silk and satin colors. So if I do try to do something like a satin gown or something like that, it might be with that color, but then some of these are real pretty too, so it's going to be a tough choice. So hopefully you can see some of the shimmer now that these are starting, the ones on this side are starting to dry. Maybe I'll come do one final video to show the shimmer, but I think I'll just stick with the swatches. So I'm just going to insert this into the video. These are the swatches. They're not like 100% dry, but they're surface dry. So you can see the difference in the finish or the sheen between the matte colors and the metallic colors. They're really quite lovely. Now the color's not going to be true because video color is usually pretty off, but you can get a really good look at the sheen. So then there was one more paint I was going to swatch, which is one of the sample paints. Where did I put it? So I believe there were 5 total sample colors for February this year. They even have these cute little heart symbols on them. This one is a shimmer paint as well. I swatched that previously on my Twitch channel. So what the sample paints are usually is if there's a mistake when they're mixing color. So they're just like cooking. There's a recipe where you put this much of that pigment in and that much of that pigment in to make this color, say. And there's different bases, different acrylic paint mixes. So if you think of that sort of like the bouillon or the stock for the stew. And if there's a mistake in any of that process, the color won't turn out exactly the way that color normally would. So instead of just tossing it, they bottle them up in these sample bottles and they send them out free with packages that are ordered on reapermini.com. So the downside is you usually can't get sample colors again. The upside is you got free paint. You got to try out the paint. I mean, a bottle of paint can last quite a while. So I'm just gonna, so this is a deeper pink than the others. And I do actually have the 5th bottle, but I can't really swatch it out. And I'll explain why. And I don't think this happened during the part of the video that got cut out. So I had the 2 boxes that shipped and the 1 damaged paint. And this is the damaged paint. And it's quite obvious. Now I think it is possible to have, shake it just, for the sake of being thorough. I think it is possible to have cold damaged paint that's a little less obvious than this. It would be more like wet sand. But this, you can see that there's fluid that's separated out, and then the solids have literally become chunky, cottage cheesy. I mean, it does have kind of a wet sand look as well. So it's so thick. I did do this on paper on my frozen paint video. It's so thick that I'm worried that it would mess up the scanner or scratch the scanner glass if I scan that paint. So, but I'm pretty sure the color is representative of the 5th pink. So that's another set of swatches, my sad, lonely swatch party. And thank you for watching. Check out birdwiththebrush.com and you can find scans and additional information on reapervirtual.com and just general miniature painting goodies. I would advise you that when you get these paints yourself, you shake them a little more than I'm doing here on stream. Technically, mine have already been shaken more than it appears. Reaper paints don't typically need like an insane amount of shaking, but so that's what I was saying, the mass tone. And then to get the undertone, I just wipe my brush off a little and pull the paint down until I can see some of the paper through it. And I don't think we're getting too much glare from the lights. But that's nice because then you can kind of get an idea of what is it going to look like if I use it for a wash or a glaze or something like that. So that is Rhody Soil. That looks like a nice, useful color. This one is Sky Smog, which on the box it said Sky Smog Haze, so I wrote hazing, but it turns out that part didn't make it to the label. So I don't know if you saw there was just a little bit of clear fluid that came out. That'll happen with new paints or paints that haven't been shaken very well. It's the binder part of the paint, so it's not ideal. If you see that happening, it's worth, you know, shake it some more or even pop off the bottle and see if you've got stuff stuck in the nozzle. Oh, that's a nice, useful looking color too. You can never really have enough, you know, tans and browns and ivories and things like that in my book because there's so many things that are that color. We'll just tilt it a little. And yeah, by the, you know, as I get towards the end, these ones will dry and we'll look at them again dry. All right. Ion Soot is the next one. Looks like a nice pale gray. Does seem like a very cyberpunk themed kind of color. Gutter Grime. This looks like it could come in useful for a few things. I'm happy to see this because most of you are probably aware that Reaper canceled some paints recently. And it seemed like for some reason khaki greens really came under the hammer. So I'm glad to see some more khaki green options coming up. I'll probably take a scan of this. My scanner is fairly true to color because you're getting a sense of the color. Oh, sorry, Valander. No, I kept saying Eastern in the chat because I think in Eastern, not Reaper time. I probably should have said it in both. But I will try to take a scan and possibly a photograph of this and then put it up on my blog. Because I find that video color is never quite correct. I mean, even photographs, if you've tried taking pictures of your miniatures, I'm sure you've suffered with this one is carbon scoring. Suffered with the fact that the color does not look correct. But I find it like 5 times as bad on video. Oops, that was too much water. Yeah, sometimes I am surprised. Especially dark colors, it can be really hard to tell what the color underneath is, what that undertone is. Yes, I have had to. The only reason I buy a camera now really is to take pictures of miniatures since phone cameras are so good. And if you have the equivalent of an iPhone 8 or later and you're not selling your miniatures, you should be able to get pretty good pictures of your figures off of it. What you need to mess around with is having a nice background and putting, playing with the lights, because sometimes some cameras want more light, some cameras it's like, oh, the light's too much or it's too close. So you can, whatever, if you have a decent camera or a later model phone, it's worth messing around with your setup and your lights for taking pictures. Oh, I'm sorry you had to wait so long, Francis. Yeah, Facebook converted the time to your local Pacific. Huh. I swear I told it Eastern. Isn't that weird? But Facebook is ever so unhelpful sometimes. So this is Hardsuit Blue. Oop. And that's not unusual either if you open a bottle and some starts coming out, especially if it, like you just got it delivered or whatever. That is not weird at all. So this will probably be interesting when we do the thin down, because they don't look like super different if you look at them in the master. I mean, they're different, but yeah, I think it comes up more when you start thinning it down. That this blue has a little bit of green in it, so it's a little more of a teal. This will be a great color. Actually, they both will be great colors for doing shading on non-metallic metal. I suspect that I will use both of those often for that purpose. Oh, I was going to show you guys one other thing. I'm not taking the time to do it now, but one thing I do when I get new paints is I don't always do this. I'm partly doing that for your benefit, but I do always do this. I put a drop on the top of my bottle, and I also go ahead and just put my initials on underneath. And partly that's because I have paint sets for different purposes. Like I have some paints that are just like for conventions or paint takes and stuff. But if you go hang out with your friends, when we're allowed to do that again, obviously this had to begin in a different world than the one we currently live in. But if you ever paint with other people or you go to a convention like Reaper Con, it makes it so much easier to find your stuff. If you might want to put it on the side of the bottle too, but I usually just put it on the bottom for mine. So that's kind of the quick swatch method, is to at least have it on your caps so that the bottles are clear, but the plastic's just thick enough that it slightly lightens the color. Oh, why is Sky's Mox? All right, we are up to Mantis Gray. Well, that sounds like something you should start up again, Valander. And then the downside of paper swatches is all those little spots are there now. So I would say you've got a built-in highlight for the Mantis Gray with the ion soot. So that's nice. Or shade for the ion soot if you want to look at it that way. But these are nice. So when I do stuff like animals or even non-metallic metal, I don't like using true neutral grays. So in the Reaper line, that'd be like misty gray, cloudy gray, rainy gray, and then black and white. Those are like true pure neutrals, and those don't exist in nature. Those are man-made, and they look man-made if you use, like, they're just dull. They don't capture your interest. Oh no, I'm like a color geek. If someone told me they were going to preview colors and they weren't doing something like this, I'd be very disappointed if you point this. We are on deflector shield, so that's deflector shield. So I will use both of these colors quite a bit. I think I use the stone gray triad a great deal. And these look like they're a little bit cooler, which will give a variation. So this, I got a little streak in because there were some dots of Mantis Gray. And you can see the deflector shield is, I think you can kind of just see a diagonal streak right there. So it's a yellow, and that's just the nature of yellows. There's a pigment called cadmium, and you can, I did actually mean to say what the paper was. Thank you, Valander. So this is cheap watercolor paper. And I don't like this for watercolor, but it's great for doing stuff like this because it's really nice and thick. So you can see, and this particular book, the pages are perforated, so I can pull them out for doing stuff like this. And I do recommend something a little bit like this, but and it's not, you should be able to get this at like Michael's, Joann's, anything like that with the coupon, or they'll have it like buy one get one 50% off. These books are not expensive at all. That's one of the other things I like about them. But if you have trouble finding them, or you need something that's a little more compact, this would be my second recommendation. This is drawing paper from Strathmore. And I think it's 80 pound, and that other stuff is 140 pound. And that's the weight of the paper. So basically, however many pounds they say it is, the more pounds it is, the thicker the paper is, the more likely it is going to hold up to water. I've used index cards in the past a lot. It won't be a problem. They may just warp a little more, so you get like little bumps where you had a lot of the wet paint. Or the whole sheet will kind of curve up or whatever. They call it buckling. If you don't care about that, then there's no reason not to use index cards. You can even prime index cards. So I'm enjoying doing the swatches on the white because we get to see that undertone. But if you kind of want to get a more neutral view of your swatches, using gray primer or gray paper and then painting over that will give you a better view of, you know, like on a scale of white to black, is this a light color or a dark color or somewhere in the middle. You could use watercolor paper for practicing blending, like Valender's mentioning, but there is something where I would probably recommend like the cottage cheese lids or whatever, because this is a non-absorbent surface, which is what we paint on for miniatures. Or you take paper and then prime it, and then it becomes a surface that's closer to like what we paint on miniatures. So when you're doing practice for something you would really do on a miniature, so freehand, I use the bottom of Bones figures. I use like the flat base on Bones figures all the time for practicing freehand, or like just black bases. So if I'm practicing light color, but it's like cream cheese. You can get cream cheese and stuff. All kinds of stuff comes with these lids on. Blister packs too probably work, but then they're clear. And you can buy plastic cartons, styrene. I don't know if it's as much anymore, but it used to be when you get like those sample credit cards in like the 4 million credit card applications that you get. Those used to be plastic card, but I think they're often a coated paper now. All right, Viceroy Crimson is next. But anyway, so I was saying about the yellow that nobody's ripping you off. It's just the nature of yellow and red pigments that they're pretty transparent. Okay, so there I had the splooching, which is just there was some air in the bottle or in transit. It just happens. Ooh, this looks like a nice red. Let's make sure it's on flame. Red is definitely one that you're going to get to see, you know, how rich the color is a little more in the thinned down version. So that it is a bit of like, it's not a super intense red. It's pretty intense, but it's not like, you know, in your face full intensity red. But there's like a richness of the scarlet underneath that you can see. I like that. Oh, Synth Flesh. This is one of the ones that Michael was singing the praises of, so I'm excited to see what this one looks like. Oh, no, I don't need my... So far I haven't needed my pokey tool. I'm kind of surprised. So that's the bottle of that one. Ooh, this is a nice color. So this is, if you saw the succubi that I painted, this color is similar to some of the lighter colors I was using in the skin tones of those. I would definitely enjoy it for kind of a twist on skin tones. When I do fantasy skin tones, I kind of tend to like to do something that's like a twist on an actual skin tone. So it's not like crazy, you know, crazy red color, but more of like if a person was red, what kind of red would, because we call people red and black and yellow and white, but we're really all just kinds of tan and brown and stuff. Let's see. Yes, that's a slightly pinky purple gray. Yeah, hotel key cards. Those would be great. Do you mean flat as in flat close to the paper, or flat as in flat finish of mateness? Because they definitely do dry matte. And they're really, I mean, Reaper paints level out pretty well. Like I can kind of, I'm sorry, I was looking down. I wear bifocals now and I'm nearsighted, so if I take my glasses off, it's kind of like having a built-in microscope. So that's what I was doing just there. I can see just a little and feel just a little bit of that over the surface of the paper, but you would have trouble making Reaper paints so thick they're textural. I mean, they're not like this kind of tube paint where that's just gonna, I could make peaks with that. They're not gonna be like that. In fact, I use paint pretty much straight out of the bottle. And I would be making a slightly more even coat with that. I would just, I wouldn't worry about it too much, because essentially this is like me doing 2 or 3 coats on a miniature. So I wouldn't want to blob it on a miniature the way I did here. But for the swatches, Reaper paint does well with this approach, where you have it a little bit thicker and then you pull it down with the water if you want. And you don't have to pull it down with the water. So this is Rutarki Flesh. This is the kind of canon skin color for the race of characters, the big guy that had the tub. Where is he? Just for people who come in late. So officially this is the skin color of his people, but once you have the dude, he's your dude. You can paint whatever color you want, is what I say about that. So my test for whether you need to thin a paint or not, and I will get, look, an index card. I can test this on an index card. Although as paper is absorbent, this probably isn't as good as testing on paper. If you run the brush through, and I think I have my focus set to right here. So imagine the brush is a boat, and you run it through. Does that little wake fill in almost immediately? Or if you paint textures, and for that you want like a kind of a big stiff mucky brush. Let's see. Let's try this one. Do you see like raised brush strokes? And you don't get either of those with Reaper paint fresh from the factory out of the bottle. If you're getting that, that's when you need to thin paint, in my opinion. I'm just mentally checking to see if I have in close proximity a thicker paint. Let's see. Yeah, I think that would work. So this is Liquitex kind of reinvented miniature paint. They call it acrylic gouache. And it is a much thicker consistency, although this one isn't as thick. But you can see when I put a drop of it down, I'm now turning this paper sideways, and it's not dripping down. If I do that with a Reaper paint. So that's your first test of what is fluid consistency, is like, well, which one of those is dripping? So if it's not dripping, it's too thick to put on a miniature straight out of the bottle. So you can see that it fails my wake test. You can see that ridge left behind by the brush. So if I were to paint with this on miniatures, which it would work fine, I would definitely add a little water to it before applying it. And now it's thinner. It's more that this is a transparent color, which is why I was a little hesitant about picking this color. But it's still doing it. I would probably still add a little more water. But that's my test for, is paint too thick to go on a miniature? And then from that point, it's all about what techniques or whatever you need. So I don't thin for base coats. I don't thin for wet blending. At least, with Reaper paints. But it's about the texture. And this, I think people almost went like to the extreme with telling people, yelling at people to thin with their paints, because we had thicker viscosity paints back in the day, I guess. And as Van Linder says, some brands are definitely more viscous than others. So that was Rutarki Flesh. That is a nice color. And this is interesting because you could go, you could go kind of grade with it. Like if I was painting old wood or something, going, highlighting it with that one or that one would give you that old worn wood look. But if you wanted, like if I was treating it as skin, this Sky Smog Haze might make a nice highlight for that. All right, Radiation Burn is the last one. And that's what it looks like in the bottle. I really hope that Sadie didn't torture herself with research on what radiation burns actually look like. I do try to get bubbles out when I have, so I don't worry about the thickness as long as I'm not filling in detail, but I do want to get rid of bubbles because, I mean, it doesn't matter on swatches, but if that happens on your figure, it'll eventually pop while it's drying and you'll get a little ring ridge type thing. Yes, back in the day, almost nobody thinned their paints, and then everybody thins them too much sometimes, I think. But I hold dignity. So I try to promote the idea of thinning them for the function of what you're trying to do. All right, so those 12 paints were the ones in the box set. And, well, I mean, the theme is a little dark, so, but hopefully you didn't have to look at scary, horrible pictures and scar yourself for life. I've lost my cheat sheet on what this is in. I feel like this is in the hobby box, but if you go on the Reaper website, it does outline very well with little pictures and everything what's in every box, because I've totally lost. Oh no, I did those weird swatches on the back of it. Yes, the hobby box is the 12 colors we just looked at are in the hobby box, and also the pokey tool that I have not needed is in the hobby box. But we still have 6 bottles of paint. The pokey tool could still make an appearance. Well, the other thing about telling people to thin paint is then you have to tell them how to deal with your brush when you have thin paint, because that's a whole other ball of wax. But we're not thinning paint today, so we don't have to worry about that. All right, so this is Plasma Yellow, and that is in the blister pack. A lot of that came up, so I am concerned that that is somewhat just binder. Whoa, that is intense. All right. Let's get ready. We need to put our goggles on from the one fancy box that has the light up goggles. Because that is some serious yellow right there. Which makes sense because of plasma. Yep. Vitamin B when you have a little too much. Yep, that's a good intense red too. And you can compare it with the Viceroy, which I like a lot. But you see now why I was saying that this is intense, but it's not like super intense. Because now that you see it next to super intense, you can see what I meant. So this is definitely red, and it has that great undertone. But this is like pow in your face red. Which will be great for all the electronic gadgets and whatnot. And gun discharge and everything from our more science fiction-y theme. Cyberpunk-y. I mean, it's got a bit of both. So, and for those who weren't here at the beginning, I shook these paints before, like right before I took the camera on, so I'm not shaking them a lot right now. When you get new paint, I recommend that you shake it more than you're seeing me do. And there's the blue, which is also, so this is an example of, I mean, it's blue in the mass tone, but when you thin it down to see the undertone, it's blue. I mean, it's powerful. So that's why it's kind of interesting to do the thinning thing. And then the last three these are not part of the boxes, but I would guess that if you order boxes, you have a good chance of getting these, because that's how samples work. Is that when you make an order, sometimes the people who fill the order are nice and they throw in some of these paints. So I just randomly named these sample 1, 2, and 3 by the value approximately. So it was the lightest, the middlest, and the darkest of these pinks. And pinks are very useful, and I don't have enough of them, so these pinks are kind of up my alley, I think. Now we get to see the pokey tool in action. So, and if you don't have a pokey tool, you can use paper clip. And the inside of the pokey tool is actually a T-pin. But what makes these really nice is that, because I've done this with the T-pin, I am not going to be covered in paint at the end of this, but if I had a T-pin, I would be getting paint on me. And there, yeah, it had a little clog. Sometimes there's a little plastic flap that gets stuck in these two. But yeah, always, never squeeze when paint's not coming out. Go for the pokey tool. Squeezing is the path to destroyed clothing. I got a little too much water on that. That's not the paint, that was me. So that's a nice pale pink. I like that. And there's sample number 2. Yeah, the plasmas are really fun. And if you're doing I think they're doing the quad color challenge again. You could try just those and white and see what you get. You probably can mix a dark from that. That was 2. And then bottle 3. Oh, it looks like it's a little darker than I thought. Wow, that looks very nice. Oh, wait, is it shimmery? This one's shimmery. I should have guessed a shimmery one would sneak in there. I think we all know how. Let's see, we love shimmery. Oh, that's pretty. Yeah, that's like one of the old silks and satins. So I don't know if you can see the shimmeriness, particularly since it's still wet on camera, but that one has a little bit of sparkle, and these two are just straight pink. So I'll go back up to the top row of colors is fully dried now. You can see that they have the typical nice Reaper matte finish. I really like that gutter grime. And I'm definitely going to like both of these for non-metallic metal. In this row, some of it's dry, but it's not all dry. And then plasma and the pinks are still working on dry. Yeah, I don't know that there's any secret to getting the sample paints. In the past, I have had orders where I had them, and orders where other people were talking about sample paints, and I never saw any. But it's just, that's what makes it fun. It's like the lottery of paints. But I will show the miniatures again, because I think we had some people come who weren't here at the beginning. And I guess if you have any questions or anything, let me know. I mean, about the paints or... So this is Turkey, and that's our old buddy Sir Forskill. This is... I'm going to need to paint a new one, because... So I was practicing speed painting like years ago. Not with a color of gold that I like. Because I knew when I went to a speed painting contest, you don't always get to pick the colors. So I didn't want to practice only with paints that I like. And I do not know the name of this guy. Something Minor, I think. But he's pretty cool. this is like, I mean, I guess in Shadowrun or whatever they'd call him, a Decker. Or her. I mean, I don't know what the official gender of this character is, but I don't think it would be a problem to play it as your choice of gender character. The clothing is not very specific. Unlike this person who clearly is a lady. Currently disassembled, but I also don't know what, I'm not even sure what box she's in. I was looking, I didn't realize they were coming out today, and I was looking through today just before I started, and I didn't see that one, but I think it was just me not seeing it. And then lastly, we have the Rug-Tarki Orehound. So he comes in 2 pieces, but I mean, it fits together so well. I had him standing up before, and I didn't even have any glue or anything. And he's fun. And also for the benefit of those who came later, these are the New Bones USA material, and it's really, I mean, it's really nice for the details. But it is a stiffer plastic, so where I would not hesitate to, these are kind of just things I practice with or whatever. So I was testing green color recently, and I did this with this guy's weapons so that I could get to his legs, because I was painting a muscular character, so I was specifically testing washes for this green color. So I did that, and it's fine. I mean, if I kept on doing that back and forth for a while, they might break off. The paint would certainly start to crack after a while if I did that. But this figure is fine. You cannot do that with this Bones USA. It's the reason it holds more detail is because it's more brittle plastic, I think. So I'm teaching a scales class, and so this is the figure I'm actually going to use in the class. But if you have any of these snake men or some other alternatives that I'll discuss in a minute, then you're fine. It's basically just something with big belly scales and then something with the smaller body type scales. Sorry, there was some weird shine there. So the reason I chose this one as the actual class figure is it's a nice open figure. You can easily get your brush in anywhere, where you can see this guy, you know, kind of the shield's in the way a little bit, and then this guy and some of the other ones have weapons in front of them. And the 2 that are like the command pack, they've got a lot of armor, accessories, and stuff on their torsos. So I prefer these, but okay, now my other cat is trying to interrupt the broadcast. They're super helpful cats. I recommend that you get some cats. This is the color scheme that we'll be painting in the class. I originally tested with this color scheme, but it used more paints. I wanted to try to get the number of paints down for those who do want to order the supplies. But the principles, part of the principle of the class is that you should be able to, you know, if you want to paint a pink snake with the colors, you know, you get some of the Valentine's colors, you want to paint a pink snake, you should be able to paint a pink snake if you want, is my attitude to a lot of techniques. I mean, sometimes color matters. And then, so this is something I scanned and put in my handout. So the colors down the side are the colors that are on this guy, and then these are some alternate suggestions. So if you go to reapervirtual.com and go to the class section and look at all the fantastic classes, like don't just look at mine, but a lot of the classes will have a handout. It should be a button. If you look at the details, it should say download class handout or something like that. The first 2 pages of my class handout are suggestions for other figures you can use and suggestions for other paints you can use. And even if you're interested in another class and the person hasn't done that, you can try to contact them through social media and check, like, do I really need the exact supplies that you want? For instance, they haven't sent me the anything other than what I showed you here. So I think this is what was, I got this last week. I think I had to place an order for some paints, and I asked Ron if he had anything he wanted me to kind of show off. And that's what he sent. I didn't realize the boxes were going to come out today. So I'll probably contact him and see if he wants to send me the stuff. I did unboxings for the last one. If he'd like me to, I'd be happy to do unboxings again. Maybe with a slightly different setup, since some of the things will be a bit bigger. But everything I got, I showed you guys, I promise. I didn't hold anything back. But my second class is additives, mediums, and texture pastes. So Reaper has a number of products in this category, and some of these are, I frequently see questions on Facebook or in the forums or other places of like, what the heck is this stuff and why do you need them? So that's the question that I hope to answer, is helping you understand what these things are, when or if you need them. So I'm going to be looking specifically at the Reaper products, but also at this category, because you can go to the art store or I think even Michael's and Joann's have some of these things, but you can get some additional products from other companies that do different things. So I worked up a few sample sheets for various, these are things I would use more in prep or kind of almost sculpting things, and then these are mediums. But these are mediums that I would use in miniature painting terms. You wouldn't really be able to use any of these as mediums because you can see from the side. Like when we were talking about it shouldn't add texture to the figure, well, all of these pretty much would add texture to the figure. But there are ways we can use them for basing and adding other elements to figures. And then there are pastes that Viejo has put some out, but the Golden and Liquitex and companies like that also have stuff like this that's available. So you don't necessarily have to get stuff that's packaged as being for miniatures to be able to use it for things. So I'm going to walk through it, and I'm going to do stuff on screen, but since some of this stuff, like this actually, to take the picture for my handout, I was running a little bit behind, and I left it overnight to dry, and it was like mostly dry by the time I took the picture. So some of the stuff I wanted to prep in advance, because, and like these ones, this dries clear, but it took hours for these to dry to their final clarity. You can see this one isn't as clear, and that's why it's worth doing the test or talking about what things are likely to have what properties. So that's the other class. That one's set for 90 minutes, and I almost feel like I probably should have made that a full 2 hours, but we'll see how far we get. I'm going to focus on the additives and the stuff you can get from Reaper and mediums, the things that apply to paint first, and then do the kind of basing type stuff afterwards. So, other than do I have more cool stuff, which I do not, does anyone have any questions about the stuff I was showing off, or the kind of the classes, or just general things? I don't have the fast palettes, the Lone Goldfish, so I didn't swatch those out. I just have the commemorative box. What's it called? Reaper Virtual Expo something box. I have the box, and then I have the 3 paints that come in a blister pack that's in one of the other sets. And then I also had some promo paints or sample paints. If I get the other stuff in, and so you guys would like it if I get the fast palettes, if I swatch those out the same way so you can see them on screen, because I'll definitely do an unboxing if I get the whole boxes, but I can do, I don't mind. It's handy for me to have swatches too. So just because I think everything's just about dry, the plasma blue is not quite dry, but it's pretty much dry. I'll just run through the colors again so you can see them dry, and I will scan, once it's all the way dry, I will scan these and put up pictures on my blog, which is listed right there. So this is these first 2 rows are the colors that are in that box I was just showing. And there's some really great useful colors. Some that work well together, and some that I would use for many other things. And then these, I did just stick my finger in the yellow, so that's not the paint, that's me sticking my finger in wet paint. The plasma yellow, plasma red is just about dry, but plasma yellow and plasma blue I must have applied a little more thickly. And then now you should be able to see, yeah, there we go. We're getting a little bit of that sparkle on the 3rd February promo color. That sparkle is still wet paint. And I'm going to share with you a thing about paint that I don't think enough of us know. So when I say these paints are dry, I mean they're touch dry. So I can touch it, I can paint over it. This paint is not fully cured. When I was talking about the mediums just now and how it took overnight and stuff, all acrylic paint takes a minute. And by a minute, I mean 1 to 2 days to be fully cured. So if you want the strongest paint job on your miniatures, you need to let your primer sit a little bit before you paint. And then you need to let your paint sit a little bit before you start handling them in gameplay. So there's a difference between touch dry and fully cured. All of the acrylic polymer pigments have bonded together to make a strong paint film. So that's my PSA for today is try not to touch your figures right after painting them if you can. I mean, we've all done it. But there's another article on my blog that you might want to look at if you want sturdy paint jobs. I think it's called How to Paint a Miniature That Will Survive the Apocalypse. And if you go to the main page, there's like sort of a table of contents, and it's in the first 3 or 4 links, I think. Because I rarely seal, but I do 7 other things instead of sealing. I wash my miniatures, I pay attention to that paint film thing, I don't touch them while I'm painting, I do a bunch of other stuff. All of that is more important than sealing. A lot of sealer is just you're putting literally a clear coat of paint. Because brush on sealer that I just showed you somewhere is mostly acrylic medium. It's the paint part of paint. It's useful, but I've certainly heard that, and I brought some paint to her made by other people that were doing matte, highly pigmented paints. So one of them was the Liquitex acrylic wash, and she did a little test with them where she kind of put them on a ceramic palette and then let them touch dry and then tried to wipe them off, and they both wiped off a lot easier than the Reaper paint. So I think there's a balance. You need to have that binder part. You need to have, and that's part of what we're going to be talking about in the additives and mediums class, is you need to have enough of this in your paint for it to be paint and make a film and stick on something. From a painter's point of view, where that comes into play is if I'm thinning something way, way down, maybe I want to use some of this and not just water. Because if I use water, then I'm separating those acrylic polymers out so much that they might not make a nice film. But from a paint mixing point of view, if you put in too much pigment, it's the same thing. You're making the acrylic polymers further apart from one another so they're not locking together to make that paint film. So there's definitely like when people are like, oh, just put more pigment in and make it more opaque. Well, you can't, because one of the problems with things being transparent is pigment determines a lot of that. So like yellow pigments are just transparent. It's just the way they are. Pure yellow pigment with just a tiny bit of acrylic binder would still be largely transparent. I actually thought about doing a class on just nerding out on this kind of paint stuff where I explain what paint is and what pigment does, and transparency is absolutely not always a bad thing. And that's one reason I like the Reaper paints, the properties that they have with the strength of the paint film, the finish, the way the paint feels. I don't like that paint that feels gooey. And that's just a preference thing. Like some people love the Viejo paints, and I think the privateer press paints must have the same thing. There's we say acrylic paints are all the same and they all mix together, but there's different, that binder part, there's different ways of making it where some of them have more vinyl and some of them have more acrylic. And then I think there's a third thing again even, and the ratio of each of those things to one another affects different elements of the paint, but not to the degree where they aren't still all acrylic paints that get along with one another. But they're like different branches on the family tree. Anyway, as you can see, my problem in the mediums class will be not nerding out on paint too much. But if people would be interested, like the next time there's an event like this where we do the classes, I could do a nerdy stuff you never knew about paint thing. But I'm going to try to keep the additives and medium ones to be about things you need to know as a painter that make your life easier. Do you even need these products? And a lot of the times the answer is no, and that's nice. But when you're having specific problems, it'll give you some tools to try to solve those problems with. But we'll just look at the sparkly a little bit more. That's very pretty. But yes, try to give your paints a minute to set was the original part of that PSA. And the other thing I want to do is I know some like crazy pigment stories, but there are some like crazy pigment stories in the world. Like they used to make paint out of ground up mummies. I am not making that up. I don't think it was ever widely in use, but mummy brown, and they just went ahead and put it right on the label. Mummy brown was literally made of mummies. They have made paints out of some really weird stuff. I think that's probably the weirdest one, but there's some other weird ones. So I will try to do a little more research and collect some more stories and some more knowledge about paints and the whole mediums thing. I mean, it was... Yes, mummy brown would be how you get a haunted miniature. There's a guy actually that's recreating some of the colors you can't get anymore. Like you can't get mummy brown, understandably. I don't think you can get true vermilion because it's like lethally poisonous. There's a few other colors like that, or that they're ridiculously expensive. And he's managed to get tubes of the original paint to really know what the color is, and then he does duplicates of them. There's an insect too. An insect and a sea creature that they get a lot of purples out of, I think. The one demo that I went to at my paint store, the guy actually brings like little crushed up the insects that they use. And they use it for food dyes too, I think, whatever these insects are. And he'll grab some of them and put them in a jar of water before he begins the demo. And then by the end, you can see how intense the color is. It's kind of fun. But most of our pigments today are synthetic and standardized and stuff like that. But pigment is like a wild, woolly world. Even now, I mean, like you'd think it would be so technical and technological, and it's like you're just turning a dial and it's like, well, I want this blue or I want that red. And it's like, no, even manufactured synthetic pigments all have their little weird quirks. And yeah, cochineal. Yeah, that's it. He used to bring those insects and dip them in water. So a lot of the stuff that frustrates you about paint isn't the paint, it's the pigment. Because I've worked in watercolor and I've worked in oil paints. And there are, like, you get to know pigments. It's like, well, I like how ultramarine blue is, and I like how ultramarine blue is in every medium that I try it. And that's just properties of the color or the paint. Sometimes they're shinier. Some of the paints are shinier too. It's not just the acrylic part that makes them shiny. There's some colors that are just shinier and some are more matte. But anyway, that is a conversation for another day. It sounds like, Sadie and I should team up and harass someone at Reaper to send me more stuff, and I'll make another one of these, and I'll see if we can figure out our tech problems in a more timely fashion next time. I was trying to get a different face camera set up because there's when I did my last video, the quality didn't seem to be as high. I couldn't save it at the quality that I know that the document camera records at, and I'm not sure if that's because the other camera is at a lower quality or what. Anyway, the technical side of this is super fun. Super fun. No, I'm kidding. It's not so bad, but I do apologize for being late and then for the technical glitch in the middle. I think I went over everything where I thought you guys could hear me and then you couldn't. So unless there are some more questions about the colors that I swatched today, or you need to see one of the figures again or something, I think I'm going to sign off for tonight. And thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. I really didn't expect too many people to care. It's like, yeah, sure, I'll watch you swatch colors. So thank you, and have a good rest of your night.